Welcome to eldritchsoup for your soul, and yes, I am back. Took a little bit of a hiatus, but I have returned. And what better way to return than talking about the new Warlock changes for the next Dungeons & Dragons edition. With the new D&D edition right around the corner, they have been releasing little bits of new info here and there, and Warlock is on that list. With an article they posted a couple weeks ago, Warlock 2024 versus 2014, what's new? Now, obviously, they're not going to give us the full details of what's to come just yet, but let's sift through the breadcrumbs of what they did give us to see what's in store for my favorite class. If there's one thing a Warlock knows, it's how to bargain, receive noticeable changes. In the player's handbook, we have made sure their patrons were part of the negotiating committee. I think one thing that's not really heavily enforced in 5th edition is this bargain with the patron. Yes, the meme is you sell your soul for Eldritch Blast, but these packs, should be a lot more deeper and a lot more sinister. I think that once you make a bargain with a certain patron, whether it's a Fae, Cthulhu, a Great Old One, the Fiend, etc., it should alter you, mind, body, and soul. What's left of it, that is. Kind of like the opposite of a cleric. Warlock's powerful patron magic has been shifted around, allowing you access to certain powers earlier and pack a more pronounced punch when you do. 2024 Warlock also comes with an impressive robust amount of customization by treating your Eldritch invocations as an even larger smorgasbord of options there. Before that, it's hilarious they use that word. What's new with the Warlock? Class feature Eldritch invocation at level 1. That is interesting. You can now select one invocation at level 1. Former pack boons are now invocations. You can select one at level 1, and you are no longer limited to just one as you level up. You gain more invocations, and at earlier levels, cantrip buffing invocations can be chosen for other cantrips other than Eldritch Blast. Invocations are not fueled by spell slots, with one exception see below. That is interesting. Cantrip buffing invocations can now be chosen for other things other than Eldritch Blasts. That's that's a big buff. Think about repelling blast combined with, Toll the Dead, like an AoE pushback, and adding your charisma modifier to any damage of a cantrip makes it not just Eldritch Blast strong, but every cantrip. Makes diving into tome invocations way more powerful. Getting invocations also at level 1 makes you a much stronger character at early levels. Because while Eldritch Blast is a powerful cantrip, it's not until you power it up that it really starts to shine. While Warlocks are allowed to regain their spell slots with a short rest, doing this once per long rest 1 minute ritual to restore half of your packed magic spell slots is very strong because, number one, it allows you to get your spell slots back very quickly, and even in combat, if you're having a very difficult encounter and you just hide away for a minute, you're able to get back a lot of powerful spells, so that's actually a pretty good change. Warlock's subclass unlocks at level 3. Selected at level 3, always prepared spells lists have been tweaked for each subclass, and the subclass are actually locked to patrons. Okay. This change I really like because, like I said at the beginning of the video, I feel like the bargain with a patron with a Warlock is kind of lost, and subclasses in 5th edition is really the pact you make with. It's the tome, talisman, hexblade, whatever. The focus is more on the pact object that you choose, not the patron, which is missing the point. It's not so much about this Eldritch corrupted artifact, it's who or what empowered it or corrupted it or is giving you this power. I mean, you could roleplay in a way where you're messing with powers beyond your understanding. You are a Warlock who's looking to empower themselves by any means necessary. Where my mind is going is almost like the puzzle box from Hellraiser, like you're messing with it and you don't realize that the Cenobites are there, or you do. Reading the Necronomicon, maybe not fully understanding that you're going to summon Deadites, or it was written by Yog-Sothoth, or Nyarlathotep is basically watching you, waiting for you to read it. Or you could just know right from the gate and you're just messing with powers, hoping it leads to making a bargain. So, I mean, you could role play either way, but that's an interesting change. Contact Patron at level 9, brand new Warlock feature. Once per long rest, you can use Contact Other Plane spell to communicate with your patron. Automatically succeed in the saving throw for the spell. Once again, I think this really pushes the theme of making a bargain with the patron. You're allowed to commune with them. And what's funny about the contact other plane spell is that it says you automatically succeed basically once per long rest. If my memory serves correctly, it is an intelligence saving throw where if you fail, you go insane temporarily, which would totally make sense, especially if you're going for a great old one. Mystic Arcana, level 11. Previous additional rule from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything to change your Mystic Arcana spells when you gain a Warlock level is now built into the class. Okay. And Epic Boon, level 19. Choose one Epic Boon, feat, or another feat of your choice. All right, now let's get into the nitty-gritty details of all this stuff. Eldritch Invocations level 1, one notable changes is access to Invocations level 1 overall have received a major overhaul with key changes including several quality of life updates. Let's take a look at some of the big shifts. Pact boons, such as Pact of the Blade, Tone, Chain, were a separate feature bestowed at level 3 in 2024. The Pact boon feature is gone, and the pacts are now options you can choose as part of your Eldritch Invocations. In the 2014 Warlock, further improvements to your pact were accessible via invocations, such as Gift of the Protectors, Investment of the Chainmaster, Thirsting Blade. So rolling pact boons entirely into Eldritch Invocations simplifies the structure while preserving the mechanics. There are two really important benefit aspects of this shift. First, you will no longer have to choose between them. All three of the former pact boons options can be selected as you level up and gain access to more. You could also have a pact weapon via Blade, a Familiar of the Chain, and Book of Shadows for a tome. Second, some invocations carry prerequisite levels, such as Agonizing Blast, which requires you to be at level 2. The former pact boon invocations did not. This means you can select from a Familiar, Book of Shadows, pact weapon as early as level 1. 2014 had these features arrive at level 3, so you're getting level 2 early for 2024 Warlock. That is a huge change, which also answered my question of what happened to the packs. So having them as invocations and being able to pick them at will is very strong. Now you can have Pack of the Tome, pick up a lot of ritual spells, have a Familiar that can scout ahead and do reconnaissance work, and also have like a pact weapon just as an in case situation where an enemy gets too close. Or maybe you put invocations in something else other than Repelling Blast or Misty Step or something. It does say there are prerequisites, so I'm assuming a lot of the additional features, the invocations that empowered, like Tome, Pact, Chain, all that stuff is, I'm assuming, still going to be there. Doesn't really make sense to have Book of Shadows be one invocation and then adding pages to the Book of the Shadows without that prerequisite. So I'm assuming that they're still there. Having such prerequisites like you have to be level 2 for Agonizing Blast, that does make sense for balancing. Because a level 1 Warlock with Agonizing Blast is stupid. So more Eldritch Invocations. You'll have more access to them. Maxing out at 10 when you hit level 18. Oof, that is good. That is delicious. Some Eldritch Invocations can be repeated. Popular invocations like Agonizing Blast and Repelling Blast are still here, but with a couple big changes. First, they are no longer limited to Eldritch Blast. You can choose other cantrips such as Toll the Dead, Thunderclap. Note, however, that Repelling Blast is restricted to cantrips that deal damage via an attack roll. Next, you can select these invocations multiple times when adding new invocations. So if you're trying to build a cantrip powerhouse, you can add Agonizing Blast or Repelling Blast to multiple cantrips. But of course, you can still use it for Eldritch Blast because, let's face it, you're a Warlock and you're probably going to want to. So I'm curious to see that if you get Agonizing Blast, you have to actually specify the spell that you want to add it to. It's not just like a net, like Agonizing Blast goes to everything, because at that point, just like double adding Agonizing Blast is stupidly broken. Spell slots, who needs them? With the exception of Eldritch Smite, which deals a significant damage, gives you a prone condition. None of the 2024 handbook invocations carry the using a Warlock spell description. You still have spell slots for your pact magic, but they're largely no longer fuel. They largely no longer fuel the invocations you get from your patron. Instead, your Eldritch invocations feel like a wholly separate branch unique to the Warlock class. Good, thank God. One thing that was annoying is you make a pact with a patron and you just get access to a bunch of spells that everyone else does. So it's kind of like, well, what was the point? Making a pact should be beneficial. Yes, there's some Warlock-only spells, Hunger of Hadar, Arms of Hadar, the Black Tentacles, but I feel like the pact magic definitely needed to be developed a little bit more to make Warlocks unique, to make it worth it. A lot of people, when talking about Warlock builds, are either going to go thematically with I'm going to go pure Warlock, or they just dip a little bit into it, which is why a lot of popular builds are like the Warlock, the Bardlock, the Paladin Warlock, where you use some of the invocations to power up these other classes that maybe be lacking in certain things or will add a benefit, but then still leaning hard into the other class. Like Warlock, for example. People found this out in Baldur's Gate, where you just use the agonizing, repelling blast with Eldritch Blast, and then you save your sorcerer spells for all the big hitters, but you still have reliable damage with Eldritch Blast. Same thing with Bardlock. A lot of popular builds are like the Tactician, where you use Bardic Inspiration, all the Bard spells, to kind of empower and buff your allies from behind their lines. But if you still need reliable damage, you have Eldritch Blast. Meaningful Pact Magic will make pure Warlock builds more beneficial. Pact Magic spell slot progression works the same way. You can still recover expended spell slots at the end of a short rest. Magic Clan gives you another way to recover spell slots. However, once per long rest, you can use this to spend 1 minute on a ritual that restores half of this. The Eldritch Red Carrying at level 20 will allow you to gain all Pact Magic slots, but flavor-wise is now considered a more powerful version of this level 2 feature. Like I said, this is something that you can use mid-combat versus short rest, because short rest is minimally like an hour that you have to do a short rest of not doing anything strenuous to get that back. Magical Cunning gives a way to do something in combat and even out of combat to just quickly get that stuff back. 3, you get your subclass, which is now your patron, which really does make sense. The longer you used to get this subclass, it brings the Warlock in line with other class options in the player handbook. I think that's just like they wanted everyone's major power to unlock at 3. Archfey subclass leans more into the Feywild nature. Misty Step is added to your prepared list. Many of these features of the subclass gives you extra uses of the spell, along with healing bonuses, damage effects on enemies while you're using it. Beguiling defenses has also been updated to reduce damage you take and inflict damage with a reaction. Celestial Patron. The subclass, which originally appeared in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, has been revised. The spell list now includes Aid, which replaces Flaming Spear, Summon Celestial, which replaces Flame Strike. Radiant Soul is now limited to just once per turn. Celestial Resilience now also grants temporary hit points when you finish your Magical Cunning ritual or complete a short or long rest. Searing Vengeance can now apply to you or an ally. Fiend. Dark Blessings now grants you temporary hit points if someone else reduces the enemy to 0. That's huge, within 10 feet of you. Still favors like a Hex Blade, like a Pact Blade weapon, but that's nice, because before it was only you, so it's kind of like a pretty niche thing. On the Fiend spell list, Blindness and Deafness has been replaced by Suggestion. Flame Strike and Hallow replaced with Gaius and Insect Plague. Once per long rest, you can use Dark Wounds, own block of number of times per long rest equal to your charisma modifier. Hurl Through Hell now requires a charisma save, which is huge. Deals 8d10 psychic damage instead of 10d10, but in addition to once per long rest, you can now use this feature again by expelling a packed magic slot. Those are some chunky buffs. And last but not least, the only patron I would ever make a pact with is the Great Old One. The Great Old One now received the biggest changes, which is now more heavily focused on Lovecraftian, eldritch, horror elements of it. Music to my ears. Features of this class now are heavily centered on using your patron's powers to curse your enemies with hex, break their minds with psychic damage, and unleash abhorrent horrors on the battlefield. Fantastic. Contact patron. You can do this once per long rest with automatically save. I like this because now instead of it just being a one-way street with your DM, just has your patron require you to do something, you can actually contact them. It's now a two-way street. Mystic Arcanum, functions and purposes the same it did for 2014 with one extra benefit. Whenever you gain a Warlock spell beyond level 11, you may replace one of your Arcanum spells with another of that level. Epic Boon. Epic Boons are a new type of feat introduced in the revised core rule set that all carry a prerequisite of level 19 to access, aka no one's ever going to use this unless you're in a level 19-20 campaign. Hoping there's, I'm not, all right, that's a pretty good boon to have as a reaction spell, but I'm hoping there's a lot more stronger epic boons or even a feat that would thematically fit with Warlocks. What a deal! The updates to the player handbook for Warlock pack a lot of changes into the earlier levels and allow you to settle into a more familiar development as a more familiar level progression as you develop. The changes really lean heavily into the chosen flavor of Warlock and their relationship to the patron. Does your packed magic mean you're a cunning swordslinger slicing your way through your enemies fueled by charisma? Do you zip across the battlefield, hopped up on Feywild magic? Or do you use the powerful psychic magic to weaken your enemies and bring them to heal? The choice is yours. So, that's a lot of stuff. Obviously, this is a taste of things to come. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of more details to go over once the new edition drops, which is on September 17th, because I completely forgot. But am I excited for these changes? Absolutely. Like I said before, one of my biggest complaints with the Warlock class is that the focus was always on the pact and the invocations, rather than the actual deal you make with your patron and then the power and magic that they bestow to you for essentially selling yourself to them. Having the subclasses be centered around the patrons, I think will definitely help reinforce that. And then the invocations are powers that they will give you over time. I think what their goal with all these changes was to make a pure Warlock a lot more viable. Like I mentioned before, you have a ton of other builds that are like hybrids, Swordlock, Bardlock, Paladins with Warlock built into them. Yes, multi-classing can be fun. There's a lot of role play with it. But I think that it shouldn't be a requirement. I think you should, if you want to build a just pure Lovecraftian horror Warlock, you should have the tools to do it. And what I mean by tools is, the spells, the themes, so that way they're viable in combat as well as for roleplay purposes. And the vibe I'm getting from this article is that's kind of where they're shifting Warlock into, which is fine by me. And hopefully there's a lot more with the patrons. Like I said before, when, you make a deal with these beings and entities, that it forever changes you. This article didn't mention it, but I did read somewhere that, like, if you make a deal with the Great Old One, as you level up, you will no longer need to have any verbal components to spells. Just like with the Call of Cthulhu, you can invade your enemy's minds. And something like that would definitely be sick and very powerful. But we will see. It is T-minus almost 1 month till the new edition goes out. So if you haven't pre-ordered it, definitely check out D&D Beyond. They do bundles of digital, physical, and then digital and physical. And I did see an Instagram ad about getting Warlock dice. So knowing me, I'm 100% going to succumb to that marketing and advertising. But that's it for now. If you like this kind of content, obviously drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel because that will definitely help this cult out greatly. If Wizards of the Coast is so gracious enough to drop any more info, I'll obviously make an update video, but till then, stay tuned.